Welcome to the Run for Cover Records podcast. Roll call.
I am Dane.
Jeff.
I'm Brian, the producer.
And I'm Bob. And I am so happy to be with you guys. And it has been a little bit since we last recorded, but that's okay. And hopefully people hear this for infinity and won't mind our prankster ways. Guys, we had a fascinating conversation with Kora from Narrow Head about a lot of things, but specifically about the record Moments of Clarity. And I'm very excited for us to get a chance to share this with everyone. One of the things that struck me, and you guys can kind of chime in on this too, was that Narrow Head is one of these bands that I think they kind of get washed in this, like, where do we place them? Where do they fit, because they're nascently folks who came from punk and hardcore music. They sound like grunge. They sound like shoegaze. They sound alternative. They sound like this. But what I think and where I think they really end up succeeding, especially on Moments of Clarity, is their ability to synthesize a lot of those different spaces, whether it's aesthetics, whether it's mentality, whether it's sonic acumen, and make something that feels really fresh and new. And that's something that really hits me when I hear all their records, but especially Moments of Clarity, which we noted is also their most current release. So where did you guys feel about that? Because I thought that was one of the most interesting things that we got into with Kora during this conversation.
Well, if I can say something, you list these genres, subgenres, and you're right. That totally is. I feel like sometimes people try to get too granular with something because it's like they're pulling influences from here and here and here. It's like this, but not quite because it's like this. And you know what I say? Rock. It fucking rocks. And it's rock music. So that's what it is to me, and they do it well.
Well said.
No cap. Guys, the other thing that was really fun and interesting was that this was, as noted, their most current release, and also the most current release we've talked about thus far in the RFC POD's history, 2022. And it sort of was
2023.
2023. Oh my gosh, even more.
So new.
It was really reassuring to me that we're having this conversation and that we aren't just having conversations about warm blanket records. And that's not to say that nostalgia is a bad thing, because I hear these records and when I hear them, they still feel vibrant and they're still new to a lot of people. But I was really excited to be able to share this one and talk about it. Jeff, you obviously have a long history with Run for Cover Records. Is it fun to talk about the new stuff as much as it is the old stuff? Because I almost feel like it might be more fun.
Yeah, I think it's more interesting just because we've talked about it less.
Yeah. And Dane and Brian, what about you guys? Any interesting thoughts and highlights from this recording session?
Yeah, I mean, we talked a lot about influences. Some maybe like low hanging fruit. I guess the first bands that you think of when you hear a band like Narrow Head, and I really enjoy talking to people who don't feel like they have to like pull away from those things. So just being able to hear Kora talk about the stuff that he brought to the table into the band, his influences, things that he was shooting for, and it not having to be these like deep, shit you've never heard of. It's not the stuff that you would think. Like, I think that's really fun. Because I think a lot of people try to shy away from the bigger, like large legacy acts that they actually end up pulling from. So I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, I agree with that. Producer B, any highlights?
Yeah, I think that, like you said, talking about a recent record, but also it's an interesting conversation because Kora is not an original member of Narrow Head. He hopped on almost at the same time that RFC did. We talk about this a little bit. He came on as a touring member around 12th House Rock in 2020, and then this is the first record I believe that he was involved with writing with, and also like did a lot of the design for the record as well. So like on that front, this record feels like a culmination of everything that Narrow Head was working towards for their 10 years of like being a band before this. And like, as Dane said, it rocks, but it's also like, it's such a coherent and like straightforward vision of what this band ultimately is, and that goes to a lot of things. Like they worked with this producer Sonny the first time on this record, and the band had been touring so much that it really feels like you're getting the best, newest version on Moments of Clarity, which is something that you love, because when we talk about these old records, sometimes fans can be like, oh, it's the first thing. It's like, like that's the juice. And it's nice to talk about a record that we're all excited about that just came out. And I'm excited to see where Narrowhead goes from here.
Yeah, I thought that's such a good point, is the idea of what Moments of Clarity. One, a total nerd stuff. I really, we could have spent more time talking about the aesthetics and how that ties into the record and all that. I'm always a sucker for those conversations, maybe sometime in the future. But I really think it's one of those, you said it well, coherent. It feels decisive. It feels lockstep, and one of those, like, what's the definition of locked in? Moments of Clarity feels like a truly locked in version of Narrowhead.
Yeah, if someone needed or wanted to hear Narrowhead for the first time, this is very clearly the record they should listen to.
Without further ado, let's have Kora join us, and everybody enjoy the interview. Kora, welcome to the Run for Cover podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. Thank you for having me.
We're happy to have you here. So, it may or may not surprise you, but we're here to talk about the Narrowhead record, Moments of Clarity. This is like how do I put it? This is an interesting record because I've been familiar with Narrowhead for a very long time in this step away from it. It's not the first record that Narrowhead did with Run for Cover. It's not the first record I heard from Narrowhead, but correct me if I'm wrong. This is the first Narrowhead record you were involved in creatively. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I was around for the one before it, 12 Top,
Uh-huh.
mostly for like the mixing process, and then when RFC became involved.
Yeah.
It's the first one that, I like wrote songs on it and
Oh, yeah.
was heavily involved.
Well, that's kind of where I thought it'd be a fun place to start is and I thought about it because I read how you were involved a bit more, in this recording. What was your relationship to Narrowhead prior to joining the band? Your introduction, like how did you get to know Narrowhead and then become a part of Narrowhead?
Sure. Yeah. So Jacob and Carson are still in another band called Dress Code.
Oh, yeah.
And I had booked a show for Dress Code, man, a long time ago. And that was how I met them, through a mutual friend who asked me to book that show.
Huh.
And in Indiana, I was living in Indiana at the time. And yeah, we all just hit it off. And I had a band called Bug.
Yeah.
And we were just kindred spirits, for lack of a better term. We just all hit it off, and we toured together a couple times, and then we both shared a lack of a bass player. So
Sure.
we toured together because Jacob could play bass for my band and I would play bass for Narrowhead. And that was kind of how it all started. We did a couple tours like that. And then I kind of just kept going from there with Narrowhead. It's been a while.
And yeah, I know. Sort of sometimes we do this and it feels like we're taking out an old book and going, dust it off.
Yeah.
What was your earliest impressions? Because you mentioned you knew them from Dress Code, but then when they were like, oh yeah, by the way, we do this other band, Narrowhead. How would you have described what Narrowhead was like back then when you were first introduced to it sonically?
Um, maybe more, even more influenced by Deftones. I think we like and Smashing Pumpkins, the
Yeah.
kind of big ones that everyone says when they hear Narrowhead. Um, uh, yeah, we all hit it off because we loved those bands. They were the show that I booked for them was at my house, so we were just at that house. You had to walk through my room to get to the basement, which is really funny and
Yeah.
annoying.
Okay. This is where I get to be the the host that wants to peel the onion. All right. So the house, you said it's in Indiana. Where in Indiana?
Bloomington, Indiana. I lived there for 10 years.
Wow. Okay. Tell me, would you move back to Bloomington, Indiana?
Absolutely. It's one of the
Okay.
cities in the world.
Sell me on Bloomington, Indiana. Give me like an elevator pitch. What are a few things that make it great?
There's some pretty beautiful nature nearby. Um, it can be very quiet and
Hmm.
and nice in that way. And the people are just the best. I don't know if any of you guys are from the Midwest or spent any time in the Midwest, but
I keep talking about how we're really stacking the deck, launching this podcast with a lot of Midwest roots. Because yes, I'm the token Midwesterner at RFC.
where are
He's
you
the
from?
token Midwesterner. Yeah.
I know we've
I'm in Michigan. I grew up in the Detroit suburbs, but I'm back in Grand Rapids now.
nice, man. Yeah, Midwest people just get it, man.
Yeah, we know. We know. Let's see. We had somebody from Ohio. Now we have someone from Indiana.
Yeah.
And I think we've had like 18 people from Michigan so far, is my rough estimate. Um, okay, so Bloomington, Indiana. You love it. Some nature. It can be quiet, but most importantly, great people. You have sold it pretty well to me. Now we get to talk about this house where you were doing shows, but you had to walk through your bedroom to get to where the show was.
Yeah, there was a door into the house through my bedroom,
Okay.
and that was how you got to the basement. So people would kind of hang out in my room, and you know, I would play records sometimes, like after the show or something. And
Yeah.
if you're cool, you got to chill a little bit afterwards.
Well,
Uh,
so it sounds like dress code passed the test, huh?
yeah, well, I think they were probably sleeping on the floor in there after that. So
True,
What's
true,
what's
true.
the what's the capacity of your bedroom? How many people are chilling in your room after the show?
I mean, maybe 10 people tops.
Okay.
It's the exclusive club. I like it. So, did this house have a name? Like when you advertise, put it on flyers, what have you?
It was called Jan's Rooms, named after the EP by The Fix, Michigan
Oh, yeah.
band.
Classic touch and go icons.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, very good. Jan's rooms, like plural. I like that. I
yeah.
like that a lot. Um, so what kind of stuff were you booking? Because dress code, bug, punk, hardcore kind of stuff,
Right.
faster stuff. But what else was that kind of your bread and butter? Would you do anything else?
I mean, it kind of started out. Uh, it was just there weren't the type of shows that I wanted to go to didn't really happen in Bloomington when I first moved there. So I just kind of felt like if I didn't make that happen, then it wouldn't. So yeah, mostly, hardcore.
Yeah.
And when Bugs started, then some more rock stuff, but there's not that many great DIY rock bands.
No,
So mostly hardcore.
that's awesome. And so when you talk, I mean, like this is the fun unraveling of a thing. So you meet these folks, you vibe on obviously being into hardcore bands, but also being into music at large. Do you remember any of those early conversations musically with those dudes?
Well, yeah, the night that they played, we were all just hanging out in my room, and I remember someone was going through my records and pulled out White Pony, and we put it on, and we all bonded over that for sure. which is just so on the nose and hilarious to think about now. But
Well,
it's kind of refreshing, honestly, because like you could see a lot of bands being in a position of being talked about in the same breath of their influences and trying to distance themselves from that. When somebody is like, if you like Deftones, you should listen to Narrow Head, and some people might be like, oh, we don't even like Deftones, which
yeah, like Greta Van Fleet or something.
man, what about the trajectory if you just had been a huge Greta Van Fleet fan? Like, hey, what about this? Who knows? This latest Narrowhead record made it just felt really different, huh?
Yeah, that could have been awesome.
Um, well, I mean, that's kind of like this fun story, but in terms of like how people connect. One thing that I kind of kept circling on with Narrowhead, and you kind of mentioned this too, uh, influences or like things that you guys, sonically certainly have in your DNA that I appreciate because it doesn't seem like you guys shy away from it. But I wonder, like, when people are like, "Oh yeah, they're like '90s alternative heavy," like Deftones, Smashing Pumpkins. Do those references ever? Do they ever irk you, the frequency with which they come up, or do you just accept it and keep it moving?
I mean, Deftones and Smashing Pumpkins are two of the greatest alternative bands of all time. So if
Yeah, you have no problem being compared to them.
a compliment, I, we don't want to sound exactly like either of those bands. We hope that we're drawing from enough different influences at the same time to like, you know, have our own sound, but no, it doesn't bum any of us out to be compared to Deftones.
No, I wouldn't assume it does. I think I think it's actually refreshing that you guys have embraced these things that are your influences without kind of, you know, it would be one thing if you're like directly ripping those things, but that's not what I hear, especially when I listen to Moments of Clarity, is that you've taken some of the best elements. Like I did a really deep dive on Smashing Pumpkins not long ago because it was a band I loved and love. But I was like, man, I hold so much nostalgia for it too. Like I loved it so much when I was young. Does it still hold up? And so many of the elements do. And when I was listening to Moments of Clarity, it was almost like you took some of those parts and infuse them with a few different influences and different sounds. I hear a lot of failure in the band too, and I feel, and it's these pieces that pull together that make it seem like you're doing a new sound, despite the fact that some of it is familiar. Does that track to you?
Yeah, that's the goal, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, because I think I wonder, do you ever fear that people would say, "Oh, they're just trying to sound like a '90s band," when in fact, we're here in 2024.
Yeah, I mean, I think the goal is also to like update that sound and have it or make it relevant for today.
Yeah, I mean, not a small task, because I don't know. All right, so let's dig into this. What's your favorite Smashing Pumpkins material? Do you have a record that stands out more than the rest?
Well, I mean, Siamese Dream is undeniable.
So I believe that too. That was with the crux of my Dane, Jeff, and producer B get into this too. But I went back and in my head, Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness was my favorite Smashing Pumpkins record. But I was like, but I also remember Siamese Dreams being like perfect too, but just kind of weird placement relevance. And when I listened to Siamese Dream, I was like, okay, cool, this holds up. And when I listened to Melancholy, I was like, oh man, half this record needs to be cut. Not in a negative way, but it's just, I think it's something like, I think the original release of it's like 100 minutes long, maybe more. Like it was like super long, and it sort of suffered from bloat. And I refer to it as 90s bloat. Like bands had 70 something minutes CD on a CD. So it was like, oh, we better fill as much of this as we can.
Right.
And that's one piece when I think about that. You know, you said updating the sound for now. I don't get bloat on your record. Like it doesn't feel like there's all this excess. Do you agree with that? Is that one of the things that if you were saying we're trying to update the sound, that's one of the pieces that you need some updating?
Sure. Yeah. I think especially with this record, we were trying to edit ourselves a little bit more than we did in the past.
Yeah.
Think, yeah, I didn't write any of the songs on the other records, but there are longer songs, especially 12th House. There are longer songs, and we definitely made a conscious effort um, to have the song structures be a little bit more pop oriented, if that makes sense.
Sure. And what do you what does that mean to you when you say pop oriented?
Um, I guess trim the fat is what I'm talking about right now, but
Yeah.
I'm one of my jobs is a songwriter. So I write a lot of pop songs, and
Yeah.
I think just like making sure every part is a hook
Yeah.
and yeah, simple, intuitive song structures.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think I hear that on the Moments of Clarity record quite a bit, is that it feels like in the moment there's a lot of thought that's gone into the different parts in the songs, and they feel really cohesive to me. Can you talk a little bit more about the recording process? Because I saw a lot of conversation about the difference between the first LP on Run for Cover and Moments of Clarity in terms of writing versus like feeling like this one was more thought out. Do you think that's an accurate representation?
Definitely. The recording process for 12th House was spread out over, I, I'd have to, I wasn't there. I'd have to ask
Yeah.
Jay or Carson, but it took them a long time. They were kind of doing it in their spare time.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it was way more spread out. This time we spent a lot of time on pre-production, which was, we rented an Airbnb out in Texas, and Sonny came with us, and
Mhm.
we just kind of like did a songwriting boot camp and went through everything that we had written and just kind of drilled it and made everything as good as we could, so we were ready for the studio.
I'm curious, Kora, about the writing process of you uh starting that process with a new band, a band that already existed and had other stuff that like this is a new inflection point. You guys are going to write a record together. Is that for you? Is that like I have some ideas, I have some songs that I think will work with what I know about Narrowhead and what these guys like? Are they like asking for specific things from you, or are you kind of building off of their ideas? Like once you start entering the writing process with this new group of people, what does that look like for you?
Yeah, at that point I had been playing live with the band for, you know, at least 5 years or something like that. Or uh
So you kind of have their number.
yeah, we were all on the same page. And I think there were a couple songs that I brought myself, and then I also felt that I had strengths that I could use to improve different areas of the band. Um, like just focusing a little bit more on lyrics and like I said, the pop song structure type of thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, we I don't think they ever, thought twice about a melody when they wrote it before. And this time we were like sitting with each section of a song and thinking about like, can we beat this top line, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I was, there's no one way to write a song. There were a lot of different ways that we did it, but a lot of it was also just like hammered out in our practice space during COVID, just getting in there and jamming.
I mean, that seems like it's part of the story on this in terms of like how much you guys worked on these songs and kind of went to it. Do you think this was the most intensive, you know, writing process that you've been a part of to date?
Yeah, I could probably say that. I mean, I as an artist, I classically take a very long time
Yeah.
with everything that I do.
Yeah.
Um, you could say that, but it was also during COVID, it was like, who knows when we're going to be able to do anything with these songs. So we were just kind of, you know, making shit.
Yeah.
There's no time pressure when we started writing, at least.
That's so, I mean, maybe we should talk about this too. You do have a little bit. I mean, we should not to go out and be like, oh, give us your bona fides, but you're no stranger to being part of a lot of different musical projects. How does Narrowhead compare to some of the other projects you've done in terms of it being? It seems as though, in terms of being a collaborative effort, being something that you existed before you. How does that impact when you're so used to? It's not like I said, going and writing and putting this music together isn't some new process for you. It's not your first record, right? But how is it different with Narrowhead than comparison to other efforts?
I mean, pretty much every band I've done before Narrowhead and even after has been just me writing everything.
Right.
This was my first like truly collaborative project. And it was still, I came into the fold later, so it was still the goal was still to kind of support Jacob's vision for the band. But yeah, it's the only like truly collaborative musical project I've ever been involved in, and it's super fulfilling to have something like that.
Yeah, I mean, the way you speak about it and my knowledge of what else you do and are doing, it's got to be interesting to have someone else you're bouncing ideas, working with, creating with, in a space than doing it just yourself. Was there any kind of feeling out process for you or for Jacob, if you have a register of that, of being in that kind of collaborative zone?
No, not. I mean, it was as soon as we became friends, we would like send demos to each other and bounce ideas off of each other, and it was kind of just an immediate relationship like that. Even in the Bug days, I was sending him anything I wrote for Bug.
So as discussed, this kind of recording, you were doing it through writing the process through COVID, and then come out to it. I guess Moments of Clarity comes out in November of 2022. Uh, Once it started to be clear, like, okay, the world is not ending and everybody's gonna get back to normal. We're gonna be able to tour. We're gonna be able to play out on this. Um, what was your thought process? Because I know you had a recording plan, but tell us a little bit about that process of going into the studio and recording this record.
So I was living in Houston during the writing process, and I had pretty recently moved out to actually to Sherman Oaks, which is where we recorded the record.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, everyone else came out. I mean, after we had done one or two pre-production sessions with Sonny,
Mm-hmm.
um, everybody came out and did it. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, producer Brian, can you give Sonny, and I want to say Diperri, can
Yeah.
you give a little bit of his credits?
Yeah, it seems like Sonny's been in the mix for a couple of years, doing producer stuff. The things that stuck out were
Yeah.
did a dive record recently, some Animal Collective stuff. Emma Ruth Rundle got some good
Yep.
records there. The drums. yeah, a bunch of good like sort of rock, but also like a little deeper and darker stuff too.
Yeah. And what drove what pushed you to work with Sonny?
Yeah, Sonny's the man. Um, he reached out to us, and
Really?
I remember being kind of wary of that relationship because of that. I was just like, why is this guy hitting us up? Shouldn't we find our own guy? And we had a meeting with him. I think it was over Zoom, probably the first time and that we met him, and uh it just felt like we were on the same page and that he could kind of fill in some of the gaps for us creatively. Um, yeah, production wise. Yeah, and it turned out to be an awesome relationship. He's like a brother to me now.
Oh, really? That's awesome. Because I that's not that doesn't always happen, right? You know what I mean? Like it doesn't always happen that it's like, oh, we worked with this person and now I have a continued relationship.
Yeah, I mean, I hear so many horror stories from buddies working with new producers and having a horrible time, having to re-record a whole record or something, and we lucked out. Uh, yeah, it's just been a really great relationship.
That's awesome. So, what I was going to get to too, because so we got that. How did the relationship, to the best of your knowledge, start with between Narrowhead and Run for Cover?
Oh man,
Were
I
you
don't,
around for that? Because I know you probably you might have been around, but I don't know if you were more on the periphery at that point.
yeah, I was around. I know that someone had reached out maybe during the recording process of 12th House Rock,
Mm-hmm.
um, asking if RFC would be interested, and nothing really came out of that conversation at that time.
Uh-huh.
And then I don't know, it wasn't until after that record was finished and we were working with a new manager at the time, Sammy Siegler,
Uh-huh.
who was kind of able to bridge the gap for us a little bit. And it
Man,
all,
I wish we knew anyone on this line that could tell us more about how the Narrowhead and Run for Cover thing got together.
that would
Oh,
be,
wait, we got the right people here. Okay.
The way I remember it is that every time pretty much any RFC band would come through Boston or we would talk to anyone, they would tell us to sign Narrowhead. We were kind of on like a no signing kick at the time and kind of dragged our feet on it, regrettably. Um,
Yeah.
but I do remember that one show in particular in LA that Tom and I were at. It was a Fury Narrowhead show
mm,
at the Echo, maybe.
yeah,
Um, and it was just a great show. The band sounded awesome. We're like, fuck it, let's just do this right now. And then that might have even been before Sammy was involved, or maybe not. Um,
no, I
but
think
yeah,
he was maybe
yeah,
involved.
maybe he was.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean that was precisely when the decision was made, was at that show, unbeknownst to the band, obviously.
When the gig is undeniable.
Mhm.
I mean, that's something that I have seen Narrowhead a few times, and you guys are, yeah, I mean that might be the right word. You're an undeniable live band. Um,
Thank you.
what do you think? Separate. So, and here's the deal. It's funny because Narrowhead sonically, there's by no stretch of the means what I call Narrowhead a hardcore band, but you guys do come nascently, at least some of you, from the hardcore world. Is that a fair representation?
Yes.
And your energy as a live unit, and I mean, your competency surpasses a lot of hardcore bands, but it seems as though you still try to bring a live energy that allows you to play in hardcore band settings. Is that conscious? Is that something you think just comes with the background?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's conscious. I think that we all care a lot about the live show. Um, we all grew up going to shows and seeing a band that made us want to start a band. So to us, the live show is so important.
Well, and then I ask because with a band of your sound, you're going to continue to play with bands that maybe have a sound that's closer to where you're at or where you might be heading, or even further into the rock world, but that doesn't have that energy. What is it like for you guys when you play with bands that it's like, oh, you clearly like you're just up here playing your instruments? Like, does it take away? Do you feel any sort of way about that?
No, it makes it better. It's something that we can do that they can't do, and we just get to show them up, you know.
That's where I like that. That's the right
That
energy.
rocks.
Um, so I mean, with that said, like and I hate to do like contrast because it's tough. How does Moments of Clarity compare for you as somebody who was a part of the band to 12th Hour, just in a comparison? Like if you were putting those two records together, obviously both records have some tracks. Obviously, you're more involved in Moments of Clarity, so you're not trying to dismiss the record before, but you're also a part of Narrowhead. What do you think are the major differences sonically between the two?
I mean, I think the production is just more realized. I think it sounds a little bit closer to what we all hear in our heads. And yeah, we already touched on it, but the songwriting is just tighter. Those are the main differences to me. Going into it, um, something that we kept saying is we want the heavy parts to be heavier and we want the poppy parts to be poppier. And I
Yeah.
think that came out.
Definitely.
How does that play? Like in a you're talking about being a songwriter. What do you think it is that, and like what is the logical conclusion? Can you keep going heavier and poppier at the same time?
Like like with another record, you mean?
That's what I mean. It just yeah, as the trajectory of the band, because I don't disagree. I think you landed the plane in terms of Moments of Clarity or being both heavier and poppier than 12th House, but can you do it again? Or can you go another step beyond that, or do you have to change trajectory a bit?
No, I think I think especially with our relationship with Sonny, um, that was our first record with him and it turned out awesome. But I think that relationship could be, you know, explored further and there are things that we could do better this time. And part of that is, yeah, we can write poppier songs and heavier songs.
I think the narrow well, no pun. I think the fine balance that you guys play with that is one of the biggest pieces of what separates Narrowhead to me from a lot of other bands in this space generally is that I think you can play on poppier bills, you can play on heavier bills. Obviously, I think you guys can play on any hardcore show pretty much and still hold your own on a like ferocity level. Um, so we are a little bit of a geographic podcast. And so you talked about Bloomington, Indiana, currently living in LA, but Narrowhead is a band from Texas.
Right.
Where do you associate Narrowhead more with any of those places? What music scene do you feel most closely attached to of those three? Um, is there anything special that you think is worth noting about the geolocation of you?
I mean, personally, I'm an Indiana boy and I always will be. But Narrowhead is a Houston band, like through and through.
Yeah,
It's started in Dallas, which is interesting, but it's such a Houston band to me. And I think part of the reason it's gotten to where it has is just on the shoulders of so many other bands from that area that have written for us. And it wouldn't be what it is today without, if it wasn't a Houston band, I don't think it would be the same as it is.
as an outsider, speak on that Houston thing a little bit because I think it's important. I don't think I know a little bit of the background and some of the bands. Houston's kind of had a weird music thing going for a while that doesn't get a ton of light anywhere else. So can you dive in on that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of why um Jacob and Carson and Will and I all got on so well right away. Is we kind of felt like we were doing the same thing in different cities, like trying to champion a music scene that no one was really coming to or paying attention to. And those places, uh, it's hard to get people's eyes on your art when you live in a place like that. And that changes the way you do everything.
Yeah.
So,
I
yeah.
mean, do you think I mean, right, it obviously plays a factor into the art you're making and how it comes out and how it's observed, you know? Do you think anything changes once you hit a certain level where, like, look, Narrowhead in 2024 is a internationally known band, and that sort of has to feel kind of crazy for those dudes remembering back 10 years ago or 8 years ago, be like, whoa, what, when you think back to the early stages of the band.
It is crazy. And it's crazy for me too to hear someone like you say that we're such a tight live band, because the first time I saw Narrowhead, Bug and Narrowhead did shows together, and I remember uh hanging out with Justin from Bug after one of the first shows and just being like, man, they have some great songs, but they just suck live.
Right. Yeah.
That's
So
funny because the live show is like 100% what sold me on the band.
it took well, I mean, this
It
was
takes time. Yeah.
Yeah.
it
A
it
different time
took a
period.
while to get everything together, and they were a tight live band before I even started
Yeah.
playing them. But yeah, it was a different thing back then completely.
I mean, I think about that Houston kind of thing, and it seemed there's like this ragtag energy because as someone who lived briefly, very briefly in Texas, but have friends who've lived there now forever. I lived in San Antonio, which was a weird place where music was barely appreciated. Like, unless it was line dancing, it was kind of seen as like, I don't know how much time we have for that. Austin was the center of the universe. Dallas, Fort Worth had its own thing and certainly was glowing, But Houston was kind of like this scrappy ragtag, like really eclectic and diverse, especially in the punk and hardcore world, doing all sorts of different stuff. And for a city so big, have a music scene that was sort of like could be described as scrappy is funny, Um, but it's cool to see Narrowhead do that and kind of evolve through time. And yeah, like I said, Jeff reiterated the live show is where it's at now.
Kora, I wanted to ask, you coming into the writing process with moments of clarity. You also, in entering with this record, handled the design, the artwork for the record. How did that come about for you? Was that something that you decided, that you presented to the band, I want to do the art? Did they ask you if you wanted to do the art? And once you got into that process, was it like trying to find a vision after having written the record, or did you guys really all like have an idea of what you wanted the visual elements of this record to look like? I ask because beyond just, cover art and layout, this record has such a strong aesthetic profile that extends to all of the other merch, and when it comes into the live show with things like backdrops or things like that, it's really like it has its own. This record has a very strong aesthetic and a cohesive aesthetic, and I'd love to hear more about how you arrived where you did with the art.
Yeah, that's really nice to hear. Thank you. Um, yeah, I think we all had ideas of like a ballpark of where we wanted it to land, but um, the way the way that I do art is just kind of trial and error, and you never really know what direction it's gonna go. Madison East did a couple collages for us, and I took those collages and kind of digitally recollaged them for the cover, and then did the rest of it. I did a similar process for 12th House. I Our friend Barry did a painting for the cover, and then I did everything else and laid it out. I think ever since I joined the band, I it was just kind of a default thing because I care so much about the art and the visual representation of the band to the point where I have a hard time letting go of that control, which is maybe a detriment.
Can we unpack? Let's unpack that a little bit. First thing first, why do you care so much about the visual representation?
I mean, it's such
I
a
think
huge,
this is a good thing. I think it's such a good thing. Sorry, go ahead.
that's just a huge piece of the puzzle for a great band. It's got to look cool for someone to stop and listen to it.
I hope people audibly underline and put in bold text what Core just said. Speaking to the audience, so I'm going to go like third person here, right? But it's so important to care about that stuff. And there's some people who really do care, and I hope that at least one person who really does care ends up in each band because if you don't have someone, you end up putting out stuff that's just kind of like, oh yeah, let's just do this. And I don't know. To me, it undervalues, it undersells all the work and creativity that you put into the music. If you just don't match that with art, it's like, well, okay, job's not done. You know what I mean? Like we didn't finish this project.
Also, on top of looking cool, it has to make sense contextually with the music, with I think the art for this record specifically does very well.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. I've never really talked about the art for the record, so these are all really nice things to hear.
Well, that's what we're here for. We're just it's like a pep talk, right? Uh with the art, what did it feel like when you got it, when you got the record in your hand and saw everything together? I know it's again not your first record. It's not, but there's something special to me when you're heavily involved in the music and then heavily involved in the art and have it in your hands. Was it a nice moment?
Yeah, it always feels good to get that package in the mail.
And beyond that, we you got to do it twice because there's a deluxe edition of this record um, with remixes and yet another chance to revisit that art and do something new with it and have it exist uh, as a. I mean, we love elevated packaging, right? So so anytime we can do something that's like a little bit cooler, a little bit elevated, and to take something that is already cool and interesting and turn it up a little bit. Was that something that you strained over of like, what can I do that makes this work? Or were you excited about being able to do the same thing in a new way?
Yeah, it took me a minute to come up with a game plan because the record had never come out in the US as a CD, which was something that we always wanted to do. It came out, I think, in the UK, but I think that was even like a digipack CD or something, which was never quite the vision. So yeah, when I came up with the idea of having the slip cover over the CD and then having the original art in the CD, I was pretty stoked about it. You can still have, you know, the OG artwork in the jewel case, but yeah, and I wanted to, yeah, just do a spin on the artwork for that. I think it worked out.
I got a question on that actually. I've been listening to the CD in my car recently. Admittedly, it was a misstep to not do the original with the on CD, but I'm glad that we waited because We got to put the Crown of Thorns cover on there. We got to put a bunch of B-sides, and that the live DVD is also just a treat. But I guess my question is like when I think about the CD DVD packaging, I'm reminded of a bunch of like things from my youth, like just CDs I would buy like FYE or whatever. Linkin Park Live at Texas is one that stands out, but I don't know. Are there any like CDs in particular from your like from when you were a kid that like influence maybe the packaging on this one?
Yeah, I definitely pulled out some CDs from when I was a kid to reference. I think I had a Smashing Pumpkins CD that had that slip cover on it, and the the like foil idea I think came from a Motion City Soundtrack Deluxe CD, which is a band that we all like. I think everyone in Narrowhead loves.
I think I had that CD. That rules.
Yeah, Commit This to Memory. It's one of
That's
the
right.
maybe the greatest pop punk record ever.
Prod Mark Hoppus, shout out.
um, Cora, what kind of getting back to the music things, we noted some of the like obvious like and name checked influences on Narrowhead. What are some what are some records you guys all love? Whether you want to say it's an influence or what have you, but what are some that you think? What are some records that you guys all love and that probably seep into your music regardless? And maybe some that would be surprising for someone who's only just heard Narrowhead to be like, wait, those dudes love it because Motion City Soundtrack, that's a little bit surprising. I wouldn't have guessed, but that's cool.
That is, yeah, Commit This to Memory is a record that we all agree on for sure. I mean, I think I always say the band Helmet is maybe the band that we all equally love, I think.
Hmm.
Obviously, Smashing Pumpkins and Deftones, especially earlier on, I think we're all listening to that stuff. But um, yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely Crown of Thorns is a band we all can't believe. Uh,
Can we talk about Crown of Thorns for a second then?
sure.
If you saw it's Train Yard Blues, right? If you saw the cover and you read the name of the band and the people in the band, would you ever imagine that it sounds the way it does? Because I'll be honest, what go ahead.
Imagine that sound. I don't know. It's
Crown of Thorns to me should sound a hell of a lot more like Bulldoze than it does, and it doesn't. It's like shockingly melodic. It's got all these elements that people I think would underrate if you don't like. Don't get me wrong, still an unbelievably hard record, but there's a lot more emotion to it and a lot more musicality and like full stop tunefulness than I think people would give it credit for given the name and background.
yeah, I mean, I think you can tell that Mike DeJean wrote those riffs. I mean, he's an amazing guitar player. I think his ability goes beyond some of the more hardcore bands that he played in.
Oh yeah. Well, I want it almost makes me wonder like because to my knowledge he hasn't done a ton outside the scope of like more hardcore. That's at least that's gone anywhere, but he's clearly like a riffer.
He's
So, I don't
a
know.
guitar player, man.
Yeah, it's
Even
amazing.
Bob, even with everything that you said being completely true, I still would not expect a Narrowhead cover of that song to make as much sense sonically as it does.
Right? That's what I mean. It's like what? How does that work?
And I'm stoked it made its way onto that CD because I think when we did it, we were like, I don't know what's gonna happen with this, but
Well, you were waiting for the Crown of Thorns tribute compilation to come out, and you'll just have to record another song at that point, really.
I'm
Um,
happy to. We definitely have a few more up our sleeve.
so let's flip the question. Let's invert it. Uh, are there any bands that the other members of Narrowhead love that you hate, or a band that you love that they hate?
Divisive bands.
I
Yes.
mean, maybe not hate, but if I'm playing the music the things that I'm listening to at home alone in my room are definitely different than what the other guys want to listen to in the van.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
You know, I'm listening to like Bob Dylan or, you know, just some deeper cut folk stuff that honestly has nothing to do with Narrowhead,
Sure.
Uh-huh.
Sure.
but informs my songwriting in some ways.
Yeah. Of
Um,
course.
and I would say that the other guys, especially Jacob, uh, brings the like emo side of things that I was never a huge participant in that subculture. So
I like the way you frame that. I was never I was never a huge participant in that subculture.
yeah,
All right.
we
Well,
all, you know, we all loved like, I mean, Under Oath, I guess, is like metalcore, but that era we all kind of did together. But
mhm.
there's some emo stuff that I
Name names. What are some? Come on.
I mean, well, it's like I don't hate any of these bands, you know, but
Of course. No, please. This is not, we're not trying to deter any future touring opportunities here.
I would say when Jacob and Rubio specifically started playing Reggie and the Full Effect in the van all the time, I didn't like it at first, but now I'm down. There's a couple of those songs that fucking rock.
All right. Well, I mean, now we know. We got to get that set up. So I think we're kind of closing up here. I wanted to ask you one thing. How would you meet someone walking down the street, uh, you're talking, there's just somehow they're talking to you and they ask you, "Oh, you're in a band." "Yeah, I'm in a band." "Oh, Narrowhead." "Oh, okay." What's that like? What do you say to them?
Well, I don't really enjoy talking to strangers.
So
Well,
you're just like, I mean, look, it sounds like my answer when like former coworkers would be like, "Oh, you like music? What kind of music do you like?" Like rock stuff. I don't know. Try to say as few words as
Yeah,
possible to
your
get away from
your
it.
your Uber driver won't let it go, right?
Yes, there we go. The Uber driver
So
who
your
won't let it
Uber
go.
driver is like, tell me more. Tell me
He's like,
about
"Tell me more, or I'm putting it on right now." So you're trying to avoid having it played and sitting in the Uber for the next 20 minutes to the airport.
I mean, I call it alternative rock.
That's
Safe.
that's fair. That's the way to do it.
Yeah,
That's
I every time I say it, I'm like, I don't even know if that's what we are, but it's an easy way to say it and not explain it further.
I love it. I love it. Producer B has some questions. I think we're gonna let him close out the episode. So producer Brian, take the microphone, sir.
Yeah, Cora, thanks for your time, dude. I was thinking it'd be a fun little exercise if, to close this thing out, you could just kind of name bands in the Narrowhead family tree until you kind of run out of steam. I was doing my research and just thinking about how many bands Jacob is in and Carson and you obviously doesn't need to like go back to fucking high school or whatever, but I thought it'd be pretty funny because it's really impressive how many bands. Even I remember the end of the last Narrowhead tour, I was talking to Jacob. He's like, "Yeah, I'm about to get in the van and tour again." So I just endless props to you guys for fucking just having that engine like that.
Yeah, so this is a good game. So if we had a timer or more sound effects, maybe it'd be more fun. We could like bling bling, but give us the Narrowhead family tree to the best of your ability.
Oh man, this feels like homework or something.
Oh no.
I mean, dress code, the pose, those were the first. That was when I first met those guys. And, Sex Pill, amazing band.
Yeah, Sex Pill's really good. Yeah. Wow.
Jacob play. Actually, I played drums in Sex Pill for like 2 shows.
Oh, really? That's cool.
Everyone has been in Sex Pill, man.
Okay.
It's not special that I have. Jacob played in Iron Age for a few shows at the end, which is pretty special.
Yeah.
Got a name drop, Clear Acid, Ruby's band.
Mhm.
Amazing, amazing band. I guess I can name the bands that I played in, Bug and I used to play in Sheer Mag. I do a solo thing. Jacob does a solo thing. The world will know about that soon.
More info on
Mm.
that soon.
Yeah, I can't wait. It's awesome. Um, yeah, I don't know. I play in the Berries.
Oh, I love the Berries.
I have played in Steve Marino's band, and I've played in Jackie Boy, his other band. Yeah, I don't know, man.
That's pretty good.
That's pretty good.
Beyond the quantity, it's an impressive number of bands to be in, but beyond that, I think what's really standing out to me is how many of these bands have good band names, because that is a ratio that is your batting average is much higher
Yeah.
than your average person in multiple bands. It's hard to be in that many bands that have good band names.
Mm.
It's got to be a good name. Goes along with the art, man.
Some of
Yeah.
the non-mentioned band names are also pretty good. Scourge, Bleed, Laughing Gas.
Yeah.
Man. Yeah, those are all great bands too.
Yeah. Jeez, come on. All right. So since I'm only going to give you a 65 or a 70 out of 100 on that homework. I'm giving you a bonus question to raise your grade.
I named maybe half of them, dude. There's
I know. That's what I'm saying. I'm giving you a passing grade, but approximately how long does it take to drive from Bloomington, Indiana to Houston, Texas?
oh man, I have no idea. Uh,
Have you never done the drive? Have you only ever flown?
no, I have done it a bunch of times, but I just popped an Adderall and
Teleported.
Well,
Took 20 minutes.
in this math equation, one Adderall equals about 15 hours. So good work by you.
that's perfect. Yeah.
985 miles if you go the quick way, a little over 1,000 if you go the long way. Kora, this was awesome. I hope that everyone takes some time out of their day to listen to Moments of Clarity and continue to check out what's coming next from Narrow Head.
Thank you for having me. It was fun.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Run for Cover podcast. Thank you to Kora from Narrow Head for hopping on with us. You can stream Moments of Clarity now wherever you listen to music, or you can check out vinyl and CD options on our web store. To stay up to date with all Run for Cover releases, please check out our website, runforcoverrecords.com, follow us on Instagram, or check out our YouTube page where we're always updating with the latest releases. As for the Run for Cover podcast, we're going to keep dropping new episodes routinely, so subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever else you listen. Thanks, and take care.